Good evening. In January last year, the current union government announced the details of electoral bonds as a system. It was meant to cleanse the political funding in our country and to move to a cashless economy. Now, this bond allows citizens to donate money to political parties through the banking system using a KYC-compliant account of the donor, and the money goes into the bank account of the political party that's verified by the Election Commission. Sounds fantastic, and it would serve the purpose of moving all of this funding into the official white money system. The bonds, though, do not bear the name of the donor, and so while the bank knows who's donated the money, the general public does not. The donation is tax deductible, of course, for the donor and the political party, but there have been some serious questions raised about the anonymity and the secrecy that these bonds encourage. Now, in earlier rules, any company or a corporate donating money to politics was very strict. No company could donate any more than 7.5% of its profits, and it needed to have been in business for at least 3 years to have made a donation. It also needed to declare the name of the party that the money has gone to. Now, in this new system, there have been some modifications. All of those requirements have been moved out. And the criticism is that it opens up the system to shell companies and loss-making companies being used as a funnel to bring in political donations. Foreign companies can also now donate anonymously, drawing criticism that black money that's currently being stashed in tax havens, like remember the Panama Papers, will be given a clear route back into the country, into politics. And the last big criticism is while only the bank is supposed to know the details of the donors, the banks report to the central government because these are public sector banks, giving the government in power the ability to single out the people who are donating to other parties. Now, a lot of these changes were moved into a money bill, which did not necessarily require the approval of the Rajya Sabha, but we didn't see the opposition put up a very strong fight, perhaps because a lot of the political parties realize that's what's good for the goose is good for the gander. At some point, everybody is going to profit from it. Now, former Chief Election Commissioner Naveen Chawla called these bonds a greater method of camouflage that fails to address the issue of black money. It's been a year, so let's take a look at where the money has gone. According to ADR, in the last financial year, the BJP has received the lion's share of 1,030 crore rupees. In comparison, the nearest competitor, the Congress, has received 200 crore rupees. But it can also be argued that this is a direct result of the popularity of the BJP. The problem is that 53% of the total funds received by political parties have come from unknown sources, and you and I will never know where that money came from. 31% of that money came through electoral bonds. So here are the questions we have to ask. Do electoral bonds, in fact, increase the thickness of the veil and make political funding more opaque? If someone funds a political party heavily, does it encourage crony capitalism? So will these parties return favors to those who have funded them when they're eventually in power? And finally, if that's the case, do you and I as citizens deserve to know where political money is coming from? It's an extremely important conversation to have on the eve of the big elections. On the show with me today, Mohammed Khan for the Congress, Major General Anil Verma, head of the Association for Democratic Reforms, ADR, that's put out this very useful information, Bhaskar Ghosh for the BJP. We will also have Prashant Bhushan, senior advocate with the Supreme Court, and Yogendra Yadav, national president of Swaraj India, join us. And I'm very grateful for the time all of you gentlemen have given us. Mr. Yadav, my first question to you. We've all seen the data put out by ADR. Do you believe that electoral bonds actually make the problem worse and allow for money to come in that nobody can trace?
In this country, we've had a lot of discussion about electoral reforms. Everyone agrees finance reforms are absolutely critical to electoral reforms. This electoral bond scheme is not a reform, it is a deform. I have no doubt in my mind that this is the biggest regressive step ever taken in the history of electoral reforms. We are not one but several steps behind where we were 4 or 5 years ago. And the reasons are very clear that you have mentioned. Electoral bonds do not come by themselves. There are three changes that have taken place in the electoral funding legislation. One, foreign companies are now allowed to donate via a Indian subsidiary. Prashant Bhushan ji is in the show. He would tell you what exactly happened to Congress and BJP because he was actually taking up the case. Two, there is no limit to how much you can donate. So your company may have earned 10 lakh rupees last year, but you can donate 10 crore rupees. You can donate 200 crore rupees. There's no limit. And third is this electoral bond. What it does is that illegal money can now be given in a legal form. So hypothetically, if someone did a deal, let us say in Mauritius, and someone was beholden to a ruling party and wanted to give them 10,000 crore rupees, all they now need to do is to have a shell company, which is an extension of that foreign company here in India, give them 10,000 crore rupees, that 10,000 crore rupees will be passed to the ruling party. The bank would know that this company gave 10,000 crore rupees. They would not know who received it. Ruling party, of course, would know that they were given by whom. No one else can find out. But if by mistake that person gives it to a non-ruling party, then the government and the ruling party would know. A, because banks are reporting to them. B, as it was found out through investigative report, there are invisible numbers written on this electoral bond. So the government always knows. This is the most pernicious possible change that we've had in the system of electoral reforms that makes it more opaque. And this is a systematic manner of really capturing the politics of this country through black money.
Very well said. In fact, we also have Major General Anil Verma with us. Major General Verma released the data that we're basing this report on. If you could tell us what your opinion has been after looking at this data, do you believe this is purely can be attributed to the popularity of the BJP, or do you actually believe that rules have been relaxed to allow for anonymous funding?
See, BJP has been receiving the maximum amount of donations right from 2013 onwards. Probably the sense is that the corporates back the winning horse. That's my view. But the point is that Mr. Yadav has already mentioned a bit about it. It's actually related to our FCRA case, which he briefly touched upon, in which the BJP and Congress were found guilty of accepting foreign funds, and Delhi High Court had indicted them. So, firstly, they amended the FCRA Act, the earlier one, the 1976 one, which was already superseded by the FCRA of 2010, and everything was amended. Even a dead law was amended to let BJP and Congress off the hook. But that is another story. So to come up with this scheme, which in the finance minister, in the parliament also, and in his various press conference, he's been mentioning two things. One, that it increases the transparency of political funding. And second thing he says, the aim of the scheme was to hide the identity of the donors because they expect reprisals from the opposition party if the other party comes to power as and when. Now these are contradictory things. That is one. The second thing is that none of the political parties came up strongly against this thing because, as you mentioned, they probably think whichever is the party in power will benefit by this scheme. Only CPI has filed a PIL along with ADR. They are not joined, they filed it separately. And that had been heard by the Supreme Court last week. And because we had then filed another petition as to why this electoral bond scheme should be permitted just before the election, there should be a stay on the matter. So the Government Council asked for more time, and Supreme Court has now fixed a date for 26th March. So let's see what will happen on that day. But I also want to flag another issue, that an RTI activist had, found out from the ministry because if you recall, in the Rajya Sabha in December session, a question was raised by an MP, Shri Nadimul Haq, pertaining to the electoral bonds. And the Minister of State replied that they are not aware that the Election Commission had taken a stand against the electoral bonds. Now, when the RTI activists asked for all those documents and he got those and he has submitted them to the MP who had raised the question, it was quite evident that the Minister of State had stated the statement was far from truth, because Election Commission has raised objections to the scheme right from the beginning. And it is there in writing, and it is there with the Ministry of Law and Justice. And the Ministry of Law and Justice has referred the matter to the Economic Affairs Department. And the Economic Affairs Department has not replied till now.
In fact,
but the minister said, we do not have any information about it. So that is...
Yes, in fact, just to take our viewers through what you're talking about, the amendments that were made in order to change the rules of how political parties are funded, the Election Commission actually said this is a retrograde step as far as transparency of donations is concerned. This is a proviso that needs to be withdrawn. And at another point, it said this amendment opens up the possibility of shell companies being set up for the sole purpose of making donations to political parties. No other businesses of consequence will be interested in this. It has also said non-disclosure of political contribution by companies in the profit and loss account would compromise transparency. So the Election Commission has very clearly said that these electoral bonds are not a good thing. Bhaskar Ghosh of the BJP, why did the government of India push through electoral bonds that are obviously non-transparent, not good for democracy and not good for the citizens? Whose money is being funneled back into India into political funding, Mr. Ghosh?
See, I was just hearing all my panelists starting from Mr. Yogendra Yadav, and everybody has the opinion like it was a methodology or a conduit in order to stash the black money out of this from the external source to internal inside the country. But I'm really surprised that if you see the before 2000, before induction of this particular, what was the situation in India? You know how the political funding was taking place. There was a huge amount of cash and black money was used as a political, we can say, resources for winning the elections. Now we want to put an end to it. So let us see that what exactly this is. First of all, these bonds are nothing but like promissory notes, and it has got lot of safety valves. It has to be bought from the SBI. Number one.
Mr. Ghosh,
number two,
Mr. Ghosh,
it has to be.
I've already explained to the audience what the bonds are.
No, let me. Please give me 10 seconds. Give me 10 seconds.
Let me ask you specific questions. You said what was the situation?
If I don't explain.
No, I've already explained it, Mr. Ghosh. I'm asking you specific questions. You said, what was the situation before these rules were brought out? No company could donate more than 7.5% of their annual profit. No company could donate if it wasn't already 3 years old
but why
in business.
You're taking in bits and
why
pieces,
was that
take
changed?
It holistically. No, Faye, take it holistically. Let me answer holistically.
No. Holistically is not how laws are looked at. Laws need to be looked at with a fine-tooth comb, Mr. Ghosh. Why was corporate funding loosened up? Why did you allow for shell companies to fund? And this is the Election Commission saying it, not me.
First of all, there is no, that's what I'm answering. Let me answer, or otherwise let me hear only what others say. The first question is that this particular system is absolutely transparent from 3 angles. Number one, even the donor has got an identity proof in front of the bank. There is no question of any illegal money to be pumped in. Number two, the receiver, even the receiver, the political parties has to be registered under Section 21A of the People Representative Act. And they should at least get 1% of the vote. That is the prerequisite.
Mr. Ghosh, you are reading out the rules to us. Give me an answer, Mr. Ghosh. Just give me an answer. Why have you relaxed the rules of political funding from corporates? Why have you relaxed the rules of political funding from foreign entities?
Digital and cashless economy.
Cashless does not mean clean, Mr. Ghosh. You and I both know it.
Even the foreign entity who has been funding, how do you assume that it is a black money?
I'll tell you.
It is coming through a proper route.
May I please answer that question?
Proper channel.
Can I explain to you what black money is? What proper channel? What proper channel is it coming through? Do you know that up until the BJP touched this, no company
even the money
that
which is coming from
no company that didn't hold 50% India's stake.
Why it was 7.5%? Can you answer me why it is 7.5%?
Because loss-making companies, which are effectively shell companies that actually don't do any business at all, have no business donating to political parties, which is why they shouldn't donate more than 7.5% of their annual profits. But if you take off that rule, then a company that does no business and makes no profit will start to donate, which means that it's just a shell. It is being used as a conduit to move money into politics. Do you have another question for me?
Even I accept your argument that shell company will transfer their money from
it's not my argument, it's the election commission.
India, but they have to be KYC complained. There will be trailing by the bank about this entire money routes.
Mr. Bhaskar
so they
Ghosh,
cannot.
Do not listen to me. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Mr. Yogendra Yadav's word for it. Don't take Major General Anil Verma's word for it. Can you take the Election Commission's word on something? The Election Commission says, and I quote, "This amendment opens up the possibility of shell companies being set up for the sole purpose of making donations to political parties." Rebut and offer a rebuttal to the Election Commission, Mr. Ghosh.
That particular argument by the Election Commission.
You object to the Election Commission, okay.
I object because...
You should really object in court.
Yeah, because... Of course, the argument is, if it is not proper, I will object. Obviously, I have all right to object.
Go on.
Election Commission is not Supreme Court. So, first, this money, if it is routed through a shell company, is properly trailed, identified and tracked by the banks.
Okay.
All right, this is another route to check the shell companies to move their illegal assets into the country. Okay. So it is a digital transaction we are heading towards a digital cashless transaction from where an individual to a corporate to even a shell company will be identified and proper action.
I want to just remind Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh that when the money was sent to Mauritius and Panama and to other tax havens, it was not sent in suitcases. It actually gets sent from bank accounts. The question is the anonymity of not knowing where the money comes from. But Yogendra Yadav, would you like to offer Mr. Ghosh a rebuttal on this shell company route and why he believes that this is actually a positive, transparent method?
Faye, I think you have already answered it. The Election Commission clearly puts it out. The fact, so let's assume it's a KYC compliant company. So all you know is who is the person. So basically, as I said, let's imagine a scenario where I'm sitting abroad. I've made some 20,000 crore rupees out of favors in an international deal, let us say an aircraft deal. And I want to send 10,000 crore rupees back to my political beneficiary party in India. So all I need to do is to open a subsidiary in India, transfer that money. Yes, that subsidiary would have a proper account. It would be KYC compliant. But basically, no one in the world would be able to find out that I offered a bribe and I actually managed to give my benefactor that bribe of 10,000 crore rupees, because that bribe would no longer be bribe. It would be perfectly legal transfer. And the recipient would be perfectly correct in law to have done this. So what it does is that it actually legitimizes bribe. And the other question that has repeatedly been asked, so my friend says that if the company is foreign, how does it matter? Because it is legitimate. Now the question is it BJP's official position? I thought BJP used to talk about nationalism. Is the BJP then officially saying what is wrong in receiving foreign money? Foreign money is all right. If this is nationalism, God save us from this form of nationalism.
Very well said. Mohammad Khan joins us of the Congress, and I will give you an opportunity to rebut Bhaskar Ghosh.
But as soon as the others have... test case.
No, one second. As soon as the others have had an opportunity to make their opening statements, Mohammad Khan of the Congress, no one in the opposition put up a fight when electoral bonds were introduced and when the laws were modified. Isn't that because effectively all political parties see this as an advantage? Opacity for everybody means you all get to make money and the rules are looser for everyone. The only loser here is the Indian citizen. Mohammad Khan.
Not at all. It gives me great pride to tell you, and we've had this debate on Mirror now at least twice before, that on January 3rd, 2018, the Congress party and Mr. Randeep Singh Surjewala, who's the head of our communications department, held a press conference solely on this issue. We called this a regressive measure. We said it will institutionalize corruption. In fact, in every single debate since then over the course of the last year, we have put out one challenge to the BJP again and again, and I will reiterate that challenge for your viewers. All the information as to who the donors is with the SBI. You don't know it, I don't know it. But we challenge the BJP. Please declare, please make public the names of the people who have donated to the Congress party, as long as you're willing to declare the names of the individuals who have donated to you as well. You have clearly benefited, as per the ADR report, up to 96% of the donations. I remember, Faye, when we were criticizing it, Mr. Jaitley came out in defense. And his response, and I think it is important for your viewers to hear this, was to tell the Congress, why are you creating such a ruckus? If a donor was petrified of donating to you earlier because of fear of intimidation or influence by the government, then now they would be free to do so. Unfortunately for him, we did not buy that argument. Now let us come to March of 2018 when this was introduced in Parliament. Faye, you will recall, and any viewer can go to YouTube and watch the video of the day when this law was presented for passage. First of all, it couldn't go to the Rajya Sabha, it was a money bill. So during that hour, our leaders stood and shouted on the floor of Parliament asking for there to be a debate. Do you remember how Sumitra Mahajan rushed through the provisions of the bill? The ayes have it, the ayes have it, the ayes have it.
For the Prime
It was a completely dark day for democracy. Again, we discussed it.
Were you asking for a debate on this matter, or were you demanding the Prime Minister's attendance?
But there are other provisions in the Finance Act. अरे फे जब फाइनेंस बिल पास हो रहा था प्रधानमंत्री की प्रेजेंस
I have a question for the Congress person.
फाइनेंस बिल जब पास हो रहा था उसकी प्रोविजंस पे डिबेट होना पड़ता है. There was no debate.
Okay, Yogendra Yadav has a question.
Let me take both the. Let me take.
Having clarified that position,
okay,
this is not something that I'm making up.
Okay, one second. Yogendra Yadav has a question for Mohammad Khan.
And
Mr. Khan,
the
one
archives
second.
of our press conference. I'm giving you the date.
Okay, fair enough. We've heard you.
The first day of objection to the scheme.
Mr. Yadav has a question for Mr. Khan. Mr. Yadav, go ahead, please.
Sorry, there's a bit of a lag.
I have a specific question not about electoral bond, but about that amendment which effectively allowed you to accept foreign money through Indian subsidiary. Is it not true that your party, Congress, was found to be in violation of law by the Delhi High Court, like the BJP? Is it not true that BJP then retrospectively amended the law? Is it not true that you actually supported the BJP? You did not object at all to this completely fraudulent provision. Are you not guilty there?
Yes.
Okay, I want to answer Mr. Yadav's one question, and the test case he has put.
One second. Mohammad Khan will first answer, and this is...
Let me answer his question.
Yes, Mohammad Khan will first answer. This is absolutely true. One second. The Delhi High Court, and I'm quoting the Delhi High Court, said...
this over the last 2 years.
One second, Mohammad Khan. Delhi High Court said, prima facie, the acts of the Congress and the BJP clearly fall foul of the ban imposed on foreign contribution of donations accepted by political parties from Sterlite and Sesa Accure from foreign sources within the law. This was the Delhi High Court, after which the government very quietly, retrospectively changed the law, backdated to 1975, and you voted for it in Parliament. Mohammad Khan, the press conferences don't matter, the votes in Parliament do.
Okay, again, no. See, I like to call these questions got you questions, where you seem to suggest that suddenly you've caught us off-footed, but the infirmity and the contradiction lies, Yogendra sir, in the question itself. We were in powers for several years, for 10 years to be exact. And during that point of time, these causes of action that you speak of before the Delhi High Court arose. We did not carry out any amendments then. This amendment that you speak of, and again I will draw your attention to the timeline. Yogendra sir, How was it passed? It was passed as a finance bill. What is a finance bill? A bill that doesn't go to any of the select committees in the Rajya Sabha, where the Congress is in majority or was in majority at that particular point of time. There was no debate. There was no scrutiny. So when you try and put this disingenuous spin and say that you were compliant, sir, we didn't do it in 10 years when we were in government. Why would we support it now? And I've told you repeatedly, we have held press conferences to give a statement of our issue. You are saying that is not enough. We've come out and said, declare what money we've received under this scheme. You are saying that is not enough. It is very easy to criticize, sir. But there is a reform happening in the Congress. There is a completely different way of thinking about these things now. And I can tell you certainly, you should be welcoming it, sir.
All right, Prashant Bhushan joins us as well. Mr. Yadav, just 1 second. Mr. Prashant Bhushan, here's the question. Electoral bonds simply designed to bring in money that keeps the citizen in the dark. Do you believe the electoral bonds are an act of opacity? Mr. Bhushan.
Yes, no doubt about it, because the whole purpose of electoral bonds is to keep the donor anonymous. That's the stated purpose of the electoral bonds. And they have made changes in the Representation of People Act, in the Companies Act, so that the companies don't have to declare, so that the Election Commission is not informed. It is designed to keep the donor secret from everybody except the government, because the banks which issue these electoral bonds are controlled by the government, and only the banks can come to know who the persons are who have purchased these electoral bonds, and they can find out which party has encashed those electoral bonds. Other than the government, nobody, not even the Election Commission, can know who the donor is. And as Yogendra Yadav rightly pointed out, this is now a legalized way of allowing bribe taking and bribe giving to take place. And the three changes which have been made are all very, very retrograde. Actually, what we needed was greater transparency in electoral funding, greater set of rules to prevent overspending by candidates, etc., a law to restrict spending by political parties, bringing the parties under the RTI law, making parties and candidates cashless. But instead of doing that, electoral bonds are brought in.
Correct.
Foreign funding of political parties is brought in, and the limit on corporate donations to political parties and corporate political donations, which was earlier 7.5% of the annual profits, that has been removed. So now this government, which claims to be talking about, I mean, they call these reforms. It's very interesting that this complete deformation of transparency in electoral funding is being called a reform by this government, which now tom-toms that may bhi chowkidar, main sab chowkidar, main chowkidar, and so on. A chowkidar who has allowed all this non-transparency.
Wait, this is now getting a political turn. I must answer.
Yes, yes.
I should be given liberty to answer.
Yes, Mr.
This
Ghosh, as soon as Mr.
concept was
Bhushan's done
different.
making his statement.
Mr. Prashant Bhushan using the word chowkidar is a concept. We are doing the chowkidari. No, I have a right to defend my party.
I will give you that. I will give you that opportunity. But if you write it on Twitter, someone will bring it up, Mr. Ghosh. It's not a word that nobody else in the country can use. If you'll just allow him to finish making a statement, and you can respond to him straight off. Mr. Bhushan, please finish.
Just as deforms are called reforms, a person who has looted this country, who has allowed these persons who looted this country to flee this country, who has allowed Ambani to take commissions, etc., in the Rafale deal, he is calling himself chowkidar. I mean, it's a complete travesty of the manner in which words are being used by the BJP in this country.
All right, Bilal, but hang on. We have to now allow Bhaskar Ghosh to respond. Bhaskar Ghosh, 3 points of response. Foreign funding. Why was it necessary to allow for more foreign funding into politics? Why do foreign companies need to invest in Indian political parties? Second question, why did we allow corporates to invest or fund limitlessly political parties? And number 3, electoral bonds actually brought in only to make the system opaque. Bhaskar Ghosh.
No, I will answer one by one. So I will take a test case what Mr. Yogendra Yadav has mentioned, that any company can form a subsidy company in India, and that through that company they can bring the black money and donate political way. It's wrong. The whole test case is absolutely wrong, because the moment you create a subsidy company in India and you bring any money through the bank channels, unless you justify and you give the proper projects, so the reason for getting the money, no bank in country in the present law, we have a strong banking regulations now, will allow this money to come into the country. Forget about political donations.
How?
No company, no bank will allow it to come into the mainstream the financial circuits. So therefore, simply by creating a subsidy company and coming from a money from Banana Republic, it is simply impossible. So the test case which has been presented by Mr. Yadav,
no, but I don't understand why it's impossible. Mr. Ghosh, there are no laws that prevent it.
We are allowing the foreign company to come with this.
No, the test case you just talked about, there is no law that prevents it. Who will stop it?
Money into this country? No, because you have to show the reason what for the money has come to India.
No.
Until unless no bank will allow this money to come into the mainstream
Mr. Ghosh, political funding.
Financial circuits. Can you show me one example?
Funding a political party, political funding, that's the reason.
No, but if you say I'm political funding,
Yes.
say,
Yes.
Okay, fine. Suppose you mention that is a political funding. The moment you say the political funding, it is identified. It is not unidentified money. That this is the amount of money you are saying is a political funding.
Ghosh,
it will be scrutinized by so many authorities.
No, Mr. Ghosh, it's identified to the government that is receiving the funding. Why isn't it public to the rest of the country? This information is not public to the rest of the country. I just want to give Major General Anil Verma an opportunity to respond.
First, it is well identified. It is identified by the bank. Yeah. Bank is not the government. So, bank is not the government.
Bank is owned by whom, Mr. Ghosh? Bank is owned by the government.
Let me answer the second question.
One second. Let's take it piece by piece. One second, Mr. Ghosh. Major General Anil Verma will rebut, and then I'll come back to your second question.
All right.
Major General Anil Verma, go ahead, please.
All right.
Okay. See, the banks have got nothing to do with the shell companies. They are in no way, they are not enabled to find out whether this is a shell company. They are just checking an address and somebody's name, and that is the KYC. That's it. So the money can be, I mean, there are such ingenious ways in which people, route money. We all know about it. So this nobody can know. Only State Bank and the Reserve Bank of India and perhaps the government, they will be knowing. So it is very evident, like now almost 30% of the donations in the unknown source category are from electoral bonds, which was not there earlier. And as per the denominations, if you go, 90% of these are in 1 crore rupee bonds and 10% are in 10 lakh category bonds. There are no bonds of lower denominations which are being sold, very minuscule number. So is there some individual going to buy this? It is very obvious that it is the corporates which are buying these electoral bonds. So if the corporates are buying in such huge numbers, and that's what we are saying, a ceiling is important. A ceiling on the political party's expenditure is important. Nothing has happened. We've got a PIL running for the election expenditure ceiling also. Nothing has happened on that. And the other issues which are raised, political parties not coming under RTI. So how can the common man get to know where is this fund coming from? It's obviously then it becomes the case of
absolutely. Yogendra Yadav, you want to respond to your test case answer that Bhaskar Ghosh provided, that it would never be able to come into India?
I'm amazed. I mean, you mean to say you open an account in a bank and say, I'm bringing 1,000 crore rupees in the bank, and the bank will say, no, will not accept it. Please explain us the reason why you're bringing that rupee. Sir, which is the law? When does it happen? I mean, this is weird, but Prashant Bhushan ji is here. He should probably answer these things. This is an astonishing statement. We shall not examine it, but the banks will examine it.
It's not in rupees, it's in dollars.
These are extraordinary justifications being offered.
Mr. Bhushan, do you want to respond to that?
In which...
third argument. You see, let's take the case of this Rafale. Now, Dassault sets up a subsidiary in India, and that subsidiary gets money from these what are called offset contracts from the government of India. And out of that money, they want to donate, let's say, 1,000 crores or 5,000 crores to the BJP by way of kickbacks for giving them this deal. Nothing prevents them from doing that. And nothing prevents them from not disclosing this amount to anybody. In fact, by law, this amount, this kickback paid BJP through electoral bonds by this Dassault company subsidiary in India will not be known to anybody, not even to the Election Commission. So you have a straight legalized way of kickbacks.
May I add one thing?
Companies kickback, and that's why 96% of the funding has gone to the BJP. If somebody were to examine it, most of it would be kickbacks.
Again.
But actually, you know, but Bhaskar Ghosh, all of this would be laid to rest.
Right.
1 second. All of this would be laid to rest if the names of the people who have donated this 1,030 crore rupees to the party were released. Just give us the names. It would put everything to rest. It would solve all these problems if the names were made public. Would the government make the names public? Why are those names kept secret?
Faye, why the name? What is the reason? What is the reason this name is not being publicized in order to protect them from the wrath of the opposition?
The opposition has no wrath, Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh. They have no power. You are in power.
Comes to the power.
What is he talking about?
Mr. Ghosh.
No, but when they come to the power, they may identify them and take the wrath.
Okay, 1 second. Mr. Ghosh, is it to protect the donors from the opposition, or is it to protect the powerful from the wrath of the common man? Because if we found out the truth...
No, it is donors from the opposition in order to protect them from the wrath of the opposition. When they come to the power.
You have a majority in the House right now. You rule most of the states. You are constantly talking about a Congress Mukt Bharat. What wrath does this opposition have if you are so powerful? What are you talking about?
No, we are the largest political party of the world. So we are receiving 1,000 crore, which is Congress is receiving 1/5 of that. But even before this law, nobody knows how much Congress has received.
Okay, very quick question to Mohammad Khan. Mohammad Khan, will the Congress Party reverse these changes if you come to power, or is it so comfortable right now that you're all in it together?
We would be hypocrites. And I can tell you this on your channel, we would be hypocrites if we did not repeal this. I am certain that when we come to power, this will be one of the first things that we remove. We have spoken out vociferously against it. We have been some of the most vocal critics of it. I don't see why that upsets some people in this panel. I would like to add to what Prashant sir was also saying. Not only have you institutionalized corruption, you've also made it tax-free, because the person who's giving this bribe is getting a tax exemption. There's also a parallel amendment which says that whoever you as an individual or a company donate to, you do not have to keep that information. That information doesn't have to exist. It's privileged communication. So again, you can give money, you'll get the benefit, but we don't know who you've given it to, and the political party doesn't know who it's been received from. It is literally one of the worst systems without comparison anywhere else in the world. And I promise you, when we come to power, this is one of the things that we will repeal. Like, for example, one of the things that we have promised, and I know I'm going slightly off topic, is that the draconian law with regard to sedition needs a relook. And we have promised to look at it in our manifesto. As I said,
I'll tell you what, Mohammad Khan, I'll tell you what, we're here on Mirror now, and we will keep tabs of all of the promises, including the one to set up the ICC in your party, which you've not done yet, and the one about women's reservation, for which I will be counting every single ticket released by your party to see if you actually walk the talk. But on this particular topic, we will have to leave it here, because at the end of the day, while Mohammad Khan says the Congress party addressed press conference after press conference disagreeing with electoral bonds, what you did in Parliament is the thing that matters the most, whether or not you supported, whether or not you voted against it. At the end of the day, this is where we are. There's something called an electoral bond in this country. viewers, and the laws around funding of political parties have been relaxed to a point where foreign companies can send in money without you and I finding out who that company is. Corporates can put in money without us ever finding out who's donated what to how much. And a lot of the money that's coming in right now is from unknown sources. What happens when you have large amounts of money being donated to a political party to help them win? That political party will have to return the favor to those corporates and foreign companies when they come into power. That's what you call crony capitalism. Nowhere else in the world, in any other developed country, and we'd like to think that we're as good as a developed country, if not better, nowhere else in the world is political funding anonymous. Everywhere else in the world, you are supposed to declare where your money came from, who gave it to you, and how much. We demand that information about donations to political parties be made public and political parties be made subject to RTI, so we know where the money is coming from. Because if we vote for you and you use that power to pay back some corporate, the citizens of India demand that information. Thanks for watching.